Alright, that was a good bunch of wipeouts right there. So, that's pretty funny is the contestants all think that they can beat the course, and you see them at the beginning, they're all pumped and jacked to go run down, and eventually they get like blindsided by the wall, or the best thing is the punching bags, I think. But they all thought they could outsmart the course or overpower it, and as funny as it is on there, like we do it in our own lives. We'll go through life thinking that we have it all together, that we have all the experience and stuff we need, and all this training in life and college and whatnot, and we feel like we got it all under control. But the fact is that we don't, and that our pride gets.
Like to ask in the beginning or at the end is, why do you think that you're going to be able to make it through this course? What makes you better than anybody else that's failed? Why are you going to be able to jump over these things or slide through? And the answer always boils down to, because I have the knowledge that I know this course, that I know what I've done before, I know what lies ahead. I know that I'm going to be able to do this because I have the knowledge. And as you see, what happens usually is that they end up wiping out, getting knocked down, getting thrown off, and just getting ultimately destroyed. And that happens in our lives a lot too, where we think that we have the knowledge, like Ben said, and we end up getting knocked flat. Let's turn to Daniel chapter 2, and we're going to read verses 1 to 13. So we'll start. I'm going to start over here and just read a couple verses, and we'll go around and read whenever you're ready. Whoever wants.
Daniel chapter 2.
1 to 13.
So like 2 verses.
Sounds good.
In the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king.
And the king said to them, I had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation.
The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The word from me is firm. If you do not make known to me the dream and its interpretation, you shall be torn limb from limb, and your houses shall be laid in ruins. But if you show the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and its interpretation.
Once more they replied, "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it." Then the king answered, "I am certain that you are trying to gain time, because you realize this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there is just one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me."
The Chaldeans answered the king and said, "There is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demand, for no great and powerful king has asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or Chaldean. The thing that the king asks is difficult, and no one can show it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh."
Because of this, the king was angry and very furious and commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be destroyed. So the decree went out, and the wise men were about to be killed, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them.
All right, so what we see here is that the king Nebuchadnezzar, who is a fairly new king, as it says it is only his second year of reign, he had a bad night of sleep and he had a dream. And back in the time of Daniel, people regarded dreams as very important. It's how the gods talked to the people on earth and told them instructions or how to do things. And so the job of the wise men was to interpret these dreams for the king so that he would be able to understand exactly what the gods were saying. But this time was a little different. From reading it, what do you guys think, what do you guys see was different about how this played out than what might normally play out? What were the wise men freaking out about? He was going to kill them if they didn't do it right, but why were they so afraid that they wouldn't be able to do it? Why couldn't they do it if this was their job and they'd always done it before?
Well, normally you would probably think that he would tell them the dream and then they would interpret it, but he wants them to even say what the dream was.
Right. Like you said, normally their job was just to interpret the dream, and what the king wanted to do was to test his wise men to see if they really were as wise as they said they were. He wanted to see if they were really interpreting the dreams as they were meant to be, or if they were just making up their own stuff. So he gave them a test and wanted them to tell him exactly what the dream was. Because if they really were able to interpret the dream, they should be able to tell him what the dream was. The problem was that the wise men didn't have all the knowledge they needed in order to interpret this dream. They were just men. They really had no connection to any powers or anything. There's only one being in the universe that has the knowledge that where he's able to tell you what your dream is, and that being is God. So it's hard for these wise men to make this decision to tell the king what he dreamed because they didn't know. In our lives, what are some, how hard do you think it is for us in our lives to make a decision without having all the details? And like, what are some examples of decisions that you guys see yourselves making in the future? We're all getting into college. What are some decisions that you see yourself making that could play an important role in your life, but you need all the knowledge in order to be able to make a good decision?
What job to pick? Where to
What job
go?
to pick?
Where to live?
Where to live? What other decisions you guys see yourselves making in the future?
Who to marry?
Who to marry? That was a good one. That's a pretty important one. All right, let's turn to Proverbs chapter 2. All right, and starting where we left off, let's read verses 1 through 5.
My son, if you will receive my words and treasure my commandments within you, make your ear attentive to wisdom and incline your heart to understanding.
Furthermore, if you call out to insight and lift your voice to understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it like hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord.
Okay. Verse 5 says, "And then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God." So right here, God shows us exactly how we can get knowledge so that we can make these decisions. But in the first 4 verses, what are some of the ways that we get to this knowledge of God? He lists it out for us. So what are some of the ways that it talks about? what do we have to do in order to get knowledge from God?
Turn your ear to wisdom.
Turn your ear to wisdom.
Ask for it.
Ask for it.
You have to like actively be seeking it out.
You have to actively be seeking it out. Any other thoughts?
Seeking counsel from older, wiser people.
That's good. Something I noticed when I was reading through this is it starts out really simple. It says, "My son, if you accept my word." So the first thing you have to do is just accept God's wisdom. And it's really easy. And then you have to do a little bit more work. You actually have to store it up. So you have to remember what God is telling you. But as you go through, it gets harder and harder. You have to turn your ear to wisdom. So you actually have to start listening. Then you have to apply what you hear. And then you have to call out for it, and then you have to cry aloud. So you can see how you have to put more and more work in. And then it says, "And if you look for it as silver and search for it." So the first one is you got to look for it, which implies, you got to actually go do something. And you have to search, which is like more of a desperate looking. So it's just interesting. We can't just get God's knowledge just by standing here and just waiting for it. We can't be lazy about it. We have to actively search out God's wisdom and knowledge, and by doing our devotions and seeking a closer walk with Him. And through gaining that knowledge, He's going to help us make the decisions in our lives that we need to make. And in verse 5, again, it says, "Then you will understand the fear of the Lord, and then find the knowledge of God." So He has this promise that if we do seek to get closer to Him, to get His knowledge, that He will provide it for us. This is something the wise men didn't know. They didn't have this power, or this, they didn't have this knowledge from God. But it's something that we have in our lives that we can use to make the decisions that we need to in our lives.
I'm not a big fan of technology. Alright, there we go. Right, so part of going through life, first thing we gotta do, as Daniel says, humble ourselves and listen to God. The next thing you do, you can't just listen to Him, right? There's gotta be more to humbling yourselves and listening to Him. Is the next step you gotta do is understand that God does have power, and we have to trust Him, right? You can't just listen to somebody and then automatically go do. They say you have to trust them in order to actually act upon that knowledge. So let's look at Daniel 2 again, 14 through 19 this time, and we'll start on this side, and we'll go down and just read one verse.
When Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. He asked the king's officer, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?" Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel.
At this, Daniel went into the king and asked for a time so that he might interpret the dream for him.
Then Daniel went to his house and told his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah about the matter, urging them to ask the God of heaven for mercy concerning his mystery, so Daniel and his friends would not be killed with the rest of Babylon's wise men.
To 19? Okay. Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven.
Thanks, guys. So what does Daniel do differently than the wise men? What is his first reaction that the wise men didn't do? Who was the first person that the wise men sought out or went to? Themselves? Mm-hmm. That's true. That's very true. So they went to themselves, right? They thought that they had the power, that they had the knowledge to figure this whole thing out. At the same time, and after that, they also went to the king and pretended that they had the power to understand this. Whereas Daniel, he went to the king and asked for more time. He admitted, even to an earthly person, not even just to God, that he didn't have the power to understand this mystery. So part of humbling yourself is you have to admit that you don't have the power. I think oftentimes we don't do that. Say for instance when, right now things are getting stressful with school and schoolwork and finals coming up, and I know this weekend I do the topical study, make this thing. And it seemed like, things were really confusing and really overloaded, but you have to admit that we don't have the power to do it all on our own. We have to trust God. We have to trust that God will guide us through it, and that God will give us the knowledge that will work, because we can't do it on our own. Right? I mean, it's kind of like the guys in Wipeout, the contestants. What do? They go through the course on their own. Do they have anybody telling them, oh, hey, you're about to get whacked in the face by the moving wall? No. I mean, that'd be nice, right? I mean, we had one of those in life, but we don't. We do have God who will bring us through that when things blindside us. And so we can't do this. We can't do this on our own. We can't run this obstacle course on our own. We can't do it on our own power. And part of humbling ourselves is trusting God, and trusting in His power. You guys ever seen the movie The Day After Tomorrow? Yeah. Do you guys remember the part where right after New York City gets wrecked by the tsunami that they're all in the library? Well, trusting God completely is kind of like that. Where Sam, after he calls his dad, they're all in the library, waiting as the temperature continually drops, as those big storms are coming where everyone's going to get frozen in seconds and die if they don't stay warm, if they don't stay by fire. But what Sam knows is from what his dad told him, that he has to just wait the storm out and try and stay as warm as he can, or else he'll die. But what do the other people do? They don't listen to Sam. They don't know that. They don't understand that Sam's dad is just like a brilliant meteorologist, right? And so they all leave, but Sam stays. Sam waits out the storm. I mean, it seemed to everybody else that they knew, like their knowledge and would get them through, and that they had the power to escape that storm. What happens is they all die. What does Sam do? He survives. But he has no doubts about that, about what his dad told him. And it's the same with us. We have to trust God. We can't have any doubts, no reservations. We can't hold back. We have to completely trust in what He says, in that knowledge that He's given us. Alright? And we have to humble ourselves and admit that we don't know what's going on. We have to ask God for the strength and power to get through. So, there's a third step to humbling ourselves and trying to get through this obstacle course of life. And a lot of talk about that.
Okay. And our last point is that God has the authority. Let's read Daniel, go back to Daniel chapter 2. And I can read this time. I'll read Daniel chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 24 through 28, which say, Then Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Arioch took Daniel to the king at once, and said, I have found a man among the exiles from Judah, who can tell the king what his dream means. The king asked Daniel, Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it? Daniel replied, No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mysteries he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that pass through your mind as you lay on your bed are these. And then Daniel proceeds to tell the king what his dream was and interpret it. So, as Ben said, Daniel went to God and asked him what the dream was about. And God gave him the wisdom. And Daniel had to trust that what God told him was true. But then Daniel goes here and before the king, and there's the king sitting up there and all of these wise and important men. And if you remember, Daniel is from another land. He's been captured and brought in. He's like the lowest of the wise men. He's really not all that important right now. He hasn't really done anything. So here he's at this position where he knows what the king has dreamed. It's something that no other wise man or person in the country was able to tell the king. And here Daniel is with his with the information. And here he is with the information. And Daniel could just tell the king what his dream was, and he could just take all the glory for himself. He would rise straight to the top. He would be the most important person in the entire country, because this was a big deal when the king had a dream. But that's not what he does. It says here in verse 28, it says, "But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown the king Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come." Daniel gives all credit to God. He doesn't take a single ounce for himself. And if we turn ahead to verse 45 in Daniel chapter 2, it says, "This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of a mountain, but not by human hands." So this is the very end of Daniel explaining the dream to the king. And he says, "A rock that broke the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold to pieces." And then he says, "The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true, and the interpretation is trustworthy." So again, at the very end, Daniel gives the glory to God, making sure that the king knows that God is the one who has revealed this to him. But then the king doesn't understand, and he makes a mistake and says, "Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him." So, much like the contestants on Wipeout, they try to take the glory for themselves if they do happen to make it through. On a game show, it's always because it was under their own power. And here the king is giving the glory to just a person who really on his own had no ability whatsoever. He does go on to say, the king said to Daniel, "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you are able to reveal the mystery." So God does end up getting the glory in the end. And that's what Daniel's purpose was to give God glory. Most of us are going into some sort of ministry. A lot of us youth ministry, but a lot of us are going into ministry. And it seems like in that kind of a situation, it should be like easy to give God the glory. But it's not always easy in the workplace, at home, with friends, wherever. It's so easy for us to just take glory for ourselves. Somebody says, "Oh, great job," and it's not even necessarily how you react. You can be like, "Oh, thank you." It's what's inside. Do you inside think, "Oh yeah, I did do a good job"? Or do you give that glory to God and thank God for allowing you to be able to do that? And it's really at the heart. Like, something that I used to get confused with was people say, "Oh, you have to give all the glory to God." And so, like, I was confused by, "Oh, can I say thank you?" But that was really God doing that. But that's not exactly what it means. It's more in your heart. Make sure that you always thank God for giving you the power to be able to do these things. 1 Peter 5:6 says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you." God wants us to be humble under him. We need to be humble before him in everything we do, because we are powerless by ourselves. And here it says, "the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you." Now that may be here on earth. It may not be. We might continue to be persecuted. But in the end, the ultimate reward is going to heaven, and that's when we will be exalted. In today's Christ-forsaken world, it can be really hard to glorify God. And I just wanted to show you an example of someone who is glorifying God in an environment where God has been all but forgotten. So we just play that. But
if the Denver Broncos were to start him as the starting quarterback, they would lose the respect of every player on that team.
For them to trash talk him like he's a bad person, it's not right.
22-year-old Dylan Arredondo created the Tim Tebow Fan Club Facebook page.
Tim Tebow is twittering about God. He's not twittering about how he's going to the club and with girls. That shows how much character he has.
When people ask, I let them know that, I am a follower of Jesus Christ, and I'm not ashamed of that, and I never will be.
You have Jesus Christ in your heart, you're going to spend eternity in heaven. If you don't, you're going to spend eternity in hell.
Nobody likes to be told what they believe is wrong. And they especially don't like to be told that they're going to hell.
Comedian Matt Besser says Tebow's approach could alienate other fans who are not evangelical Christians.
If I'm a gay fan of the Broncos, if I'm a woman who believes in pro-choice, I'm a fan of the Broncos, how do I feel about Tim Tebow being so vocal against everything I believe?
I don't know.
Tebow accepts the notion that he is a polarizing figure, but he says that won't stop him from preaching to the unconverted.
If people want to bash me for that, then, you know, that's okay. It really won't bother me. At least they know what I believe.
All right, for those of you who don't know who Tim Tebow is, he is the Broncos, Denver Broncos quarterback, and he's under a lot of fire right now because of his faith and just how he always professes it, and he always gives God the glory. And that's how we should live our lives. No matter what the situation is around us, no matter how hard life is, we always need to give God the glory, because without him, we're nothing. And so, in the end, everything we do is because of God. And we should give that back to him as best we can.
Alright. So today we looked at Nebuchadnezzar, his wipeout. Looked at the wise men, and their wipeout. Oh man, and this microphone is wipeout. So there we go. And looked at Daniel, he's a champ, right? So we need to be like Daniel, you know? We can't be like the wise men, we can't go around thinking that we know it all, that all our experience will get us through. We can't be like Nebuchadnezzar and think that, oh, we have the authority and all that. We have to glorify God, we have to be like Daniel, humble ourselves. That's the whole point is our pride is what gets in the way of recognizing God's ultimate power, knowledge, and authority. And so, let's look at Ephesians 1:18. I'll just read it to you. 1:18 through 21. That's what it means. Ephesians. Alright, it says, I pray also that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints, and his incomparably, here you go, great power for us who believe. Now, what is this power? The author says, that power is like the working of his mighty strength, which he exerted in Christ when he raised him from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realms, far above all rule and authority, power and dominion, and every title that can be given, not only in the present age, but also in the age to come. I mean, what kind of God is that? He is so, like, just eternally beyond. I mean, Pastor Rome talked about it in Chapel of His Holiness. He is just eternally beyond anything we can even imagine. And so why don't we trust in that God? You know, when we have problems in our relationships with our girlfriends or boyfriends, why do we go to other people? Why can't we trust God to get us through that, to help us through that? When school gets hard, why can't we trust God to get us through that? When we are running out of money and can't pay for school, can't pay for things, can't pay for gas, why don't we trust God? And it's all because of our pride and other things that distract us from recognizing the ultimate power, knowledge, and authority of God. So today, I want you guys to remember, to think right now, while I'm handing these out, of one thing, the biggest thing that distracts you from recognizing that power, authority, and knowledge of God. I want you to write it on one of these pieces of paper. Okay? pass those down. What you're going to do with these, fairly symbolic, kind of fun. I like fun things. You're going to put what distracts you on an action figure.
I see what for dear. Oh,
Alright?
sorry.
You have a choice. You can have a green dude, communist dude, and ninja dude. Alright? So, I will just put these in the middle here. You guys can get them. The whole point of this is really, when you write down what is it that distracts you from recognizing the power, knowledge, authority of God, and that just builds up your pride and causes you not to trust, to listen, or to give Him the glory. You're going to have to fight that every day. It's not going to be easy. Just like you're going to fight these action dudes. Right? So you're going to have to put this in a place that you'll see every day. So you're reminded daily to give God the glory, to trust in Him, to listen to Him, to make it through life, because we can't do it on our own. So, when we get this, take some time to make that. Oh, and the swords go with the ninjas too. There you go. Come on.
What a ninja. Oh, Ben. Not Ben. Oh.
Isn't it great?
Max. Yes.
And I got some cake too.
Oh, it's so cool.
Put it on their face or something if you want to smash it in the face.
Watch me.
Yes. Do you want the one with the little visor or the one with the helmet?
Oh, geez. Yo.
Thank you.
There you go.
Also, yes, sir.
Wait, we're supposed to take these out of that?
Oh, I don't think he's missing his paratrooper
I'm
pack.
gonna give him an apron.
Alright guys, if you just put down for a sec, we're just going to close in prayer real quick. I think I finished taping out, so. Alright. Dear Lord, I thank you for today and just for this opportunity to teach and just for giving us the peace and just the ability to say your words. And Lord, I just thank you for that. And I just pray that we'll just always be honoring to you and remember your knowledge, your power, and your authority in our lives every day. And just that we'll be able to give you the glory no matter what we do. In your name, amen.
It's the best talk ever.